Ujambo and welcome to another weekly recap, an observation of what has been happening in the political front, and just my personal opinion of what I think are the highs and the lows, ideas we can improve on, just basically what I thought about that last week. And I guess the biggest thing last week was the inaugural State of the Nation address to the SOTN or SONA, depending on what particular media house you're following. So President Ruto had his first address to the people's representatives in Senate and the National Assembly on Thursday. And it was an interesting conversation because I have seen some of the analysis of that particular State of the Nation address. I think the thing that stands out, especially for people who have known the president as a political operator over the last 30 years or so, was the soberness of that particular address. I think there are people who expected grand and lofty presentation, but what we saw from the president was a sober reflection. It's 1 year down the road. The president has been in office for 1 year. He's had the weight of the country on his shoulders for 1 year. He's faced criticism for 1 year. And I've always believed that the presidency is one of the most unappreciated jobs you can ever have. You fight for it, and when you get there, from day one, you face criticism every single day. And then it's a lonely job, because when all is said and done, you're the one who is accountable. You're the one who is responsible. When things go wrong, it's your neck on the line. When things go right, everybody claims they're part of the success. It's that saying, success has a lot of owners, there's a Kikuyu saying actually that says success has a lot of parents, while failure is an orphan. And that tends to happen when you're the president. And when you listened to President Ruto give the State of the Nation address this last week, you got that feeling that he's now at the point where he realizes that, yes, he has an able deputy in Rigathi Gachagua, he's got a cabinet, he's got government, but ultimately, it is him. The country is looking at him to determine where he's going and where we are going and where we are coming from. And he had, when you listen and you read and you analyze, there are a couple of things that you first speak. First and foremost, it was clear. He was not going to beat about the bush. We are in a tough place. And the media reported that a couple of days before that, or a day or so before that, he had a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting in State House. And the members of parliament tried to explain to him and tried to put pressure on him to do some immediate interventions because things are bad on the ground. And he told them something that is important. You cannot be popular all the time. And that is the one thing I have to admit I like about the attitude that President Ruto has got into his job with. You cannot be popular all the time. What does that mean? You're not going to do things that everybody likes all the time. It is similar, it's part of the cost of leadership. That sometimes you're going to make decisions that are not popular, but you're going to have to believe that they're right and that they're taking the people you're leading where they need to go. So there is an admission. There's a high cost of living. Energy costs are high, fuel costs are high, food prices are high, transport prices are high. And the impact this is having, especially on the low-cost homes, is unbelievable, right? And that is a fact. We can't run away from that particular fact. The reasons for this are myriad. There's some that are local, some maybe are avoidable, some are not avoidable. But the fact is that there is a very high cost of living. Now, the government has done several interventions, and President Ruto was able to explain them. We've had agricultural reforms that are trying to increase food production, because the fact of the matter is, the only way you're going to deal with food costs, the cost of food, is to produce more food. There is no other way to reduce the cost of food. You have to produce more food. And the only way to produce food is actually grow it. You have to go to the farm, you have to put seeds in the ground, You have to take care of them, you have to harvest them, you have to process them, they have to become food for people to eat. So the first thing, if you're going to reduce cost of living, is reduce cost of food. If you're going to reduce cost of food, please go and plant food. And the government has tried to encourage Kenyans to do that. Agricultural reforms, giving subsidized fertilizer so that people can actually go to the farm. And yes, a lot of us have tried to go to the farm and add our value and add our input to food production. So the president talked about the interventions of agricultural reforms, tax reforms. As much as we're struggling with the taxes that have been given, one of the things that the government is actually trying to do is bring in as many people as possible into the tax bracket. I have argued on this platform before, several months ago, when we first had the conversation about the finance bill, that if we are going to reduce the amount of taxes we pay, then we need to increase the number of people who actually pay deliberate taxes. Forget about the taxes that we pay because you have to buy something. The people who actually go and deliberately pay tax, we have to increase those numbers. If we do that, then we are going to reduce the amount of taxes we pay per person. Until we do that, for sure, we're either going to have to sacrifice some things that we want government to do, or we're going to have to continue paying higher taxes. But then there's a reform process on the tax that is going on. Other things that the president talked about is the social welfare net, trying to increase costs, the money that is given to the elderly, trying to subsidize education. And this is, again, part of the challenge we face as a country. We don't want to pay the high taxes, but we want to run a welfare state. We want to take care of those amongst us who are disadvantaged. We want to come up with money for women. We want to come up with money for youth. We want to come up with money for the elderly, but we want to pay taxes. Something has to give. But for as long as we're paying these things and we're making this money available to these particular demographics, then we're going to have to pay taxes. So some of those tax reforms and things like that are going on. You have energy reforms. We have several things that are going on. Affordable housing, proposal for affordable housing, and we're seeing the houses coming up. That is what the government is trying to do. But of course, there are challenges. Corruption, right there, the animal in the room, implementation gaps. How quickly are we going to be able to implement these things? All this is a challenge that the flip side of, yes, we know what is negative. Yes, we know what is positive. How do we bridge? How do we try and meet and move from negative to positive? We've got the challenge of corruption. We've got the challenge of just government. Government is a big ship, moves very slowly. Implementation gaps. There's the gap between wanting to do something and actually getting it done, execution. Those are problems. But I think there's a much more fundamental problem that the president didn't really dwell on, but that you see every day. I was on Kameme radio same week with Professor Jeroge and Ruto Ehura. And the conversation we were speaking about, we analyzed all these things, cost of living and the truth about it and not running away from it. But there's something we agreed. The negativity within the populace that is actually being deliberately pushed by some factors or some forces. When you wake up in the morning and you determine that the only thing you're going to see is what is not working, believe me, that is the only thing you're going to see. If you wake up in the morning and you decide that you're going to look out for what is working, even though it's little, the attitude you go with to life changes. This is something life coaches will tell you every day. What you go looking for is what you get. So part of the problem I have seen in the last 1 year, and I say this as somebody who has been in the process of living through negativity, losing an election, having to adjust and recalibrate and pivot, literally pivot my life from one to something else. The thing I have seen the most that worries me the most is the attitude that Kenyans go with to the marketplace, to out there to the public. We have a group of people, and some of them are actually people who are doing very well, people who are in good jobs. But if you read their posts online, if you listen to them in social places, in social gatherings, the only thing they have to talk about is how badly things are. But when you look at the guy, he's parked one of the latest models of vehicles outside. He's got one of the latest models of phones. He's drinking really good wine or whiskey or eating a good meal. But the only thing he has to talk about is the negativity and how things are not working. That attitude is discouraging, is doing more harm to this country than anything else we have going on. I wish we could sit and determine, because we are alive, And as a Christian, that's one of the things we have keep to count your blessings one by one. There must be something in your life that is working. Start from there. There are many things that are not working. I do not refute. But there are some things that are working. If you could get that spirit, that attitude of positivity, what some friends I know have been calling Kenyan Nisisi. Because when all is said and done, we are Kenyans. Anything that affects this country, positive or negative, affects us. So if you go into the country, you go out into the marketplace, you go out to school, you go out to work with the attitude that these bad things that are happening, and you forget that you're part of who they're happening to, you're going to keep failing. That is why I want to finish by just commenting. We had Julius Malema in town. And of course, he said what Kenyans are saying. And then everybody said, oh, this guy is telling us what we can't say. But let me tell you, I personally think it's very bad manners for somebody to come from another country and then come and start criticizing our leadership when they're here. In fact, I'm sure Malema cannot do that in Uganda. He can't do that in Rwanda. I don't even think he'd leave the country. So it's a sign of the growth of our democracy. And especially when you think about the fact that it's coming from South Africa and the kind of challenges they have there with corruption, with cost of living and the gap between the rich and the poor. And we don't talk about that when we go to their country. So the fact that he thinks he has the guts to come and talk to our leadership the way he wants, and we had people there clapping for him, tells you the problem I'm talking about our attitude and how we go into life. We have to change our attitude. Life is hard, but we're alive. And every day you wake up believing that that day is going to be better than yesterday. That is the attitude you have to take into how we're building this country of ours. So we keep working. We keep believing tomorrow is going to be better than today and doing our part, whether it is going to the farm or working. Here in Ruto, we're still trying to do our part. We're still trying to serve you the best tea in town, the best mandazi in town, good accommodation, rooms, clean, good Wi-Fi, making sure our conference facilities are good enough for anybody who wants to use a conference facility in the county, actually in the sub-county. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to play our role in moving this country forward. I hope you're doing the same wherever you are. God bless you. God bless Kenya.